Hi, everyone. I know all of you are so excited about AI innovation, where the tech is going, whether for your own business, organization, your career path. I have the perfect guest for you. Jodie is a chief AI officer. Honestly, she is one of the most passionate people that I speak with, who's knowledgeable, passionate about AI, tech, innovation, future minded. So you will get a lot of tips, a lot of good advice that hopefully you'll find both informative, useful, and entertaining. I won't take much. Hi, Jodie. Thank you for being with us here today.
Hi, thank you for having me. I feel really privileged to be a guest on the podcast, so thank you for having me.
It's pleasure. It's pleasure. Thank you. So, like I said earlier, you are one of the most passionate people in this field. You enjoy it, and I really like to have conversations with people who enjoy and love what they do.
Yeah.
So before we get into the nitty gritty, if you can introduce yourself, a bit about your career, what you do now, what you're passionate about.
Yeah, of course. So I started my career back in about 2014, and I actually started as a software developer for an investment bank, so more broad technically. And then in 2017, I moved to Microsoft, and that's where I guess my love of data and AI kind of really started. And I started doing more roles that got me into kind of traditional data, BI, analytics, and kind of saw the magic of when you make AI more tangible for people. And then the past 3 years, I spent at Google in an AI specific role. And then recently this year, I've moved across to Transparity to be their chief AI officer, where really I'm focusing more on kind of business and go-to-market strategy around AI. And I think, well, it's a full-time job to keep up with AI at the moment. And I think that's what I find most exciting, that every day is different. You're speaking to customers who are trying to achieve different things, making AI a reality, and then just keeping up to date with the latest and greatest in tech and seeing kind of, it blows my mind actually on a week by week basis what new tools are available, what people are doing with AI. So I just think you can never be bored in this domain, can you?
So true. You can't be bored, and you need time and good management of time to stay up to date. I try to be all over LinkedIn and Microsoft blogs, podcasts, and talking to people like yourself, Jodie, to be up to date and see what things are hidden. I think probably time now is similar to the time where the internet was becoming common and more, where people jumped from the papers into email. For people who are in tech, I think it feels like that because there's so much shift in a different way. Well, we'll get into all that exciting stuff. It's really intriguing. You have such an impressive CV and impressive career history. You worked for the big ones, both Microsoft and Google. And I'm sure many people watching us now, they would aspire to work for such names in our industry. So how did you get into Microsoft, Google? What did you learn there? How was the experience like?
Yeah, I think we've spoken about this before and about our passion for LinkedIn, because I do think LinkedIn opens up so many opportunities for people that perhaps people don't realize what's kind of available there. And I think really my career at Microsoft started through LinkedIn. So I kind of I was available for work. I was looking to relocate out of London. And it was at a time where investment banks specifically weren't really flexible working environments. So if you couldn't be there at your desk, all day, every day, it wasn't possible to kind of work there. So I was looking to relocate out of London, put available to work on my LinkedIn, and actually a recruiter from Microsoft approached me. And I can remember at the time thinking, it's not real, this is spam. And I think I accepted the call whilst I was walking my parents' dogs in a field, thinking, this isn't real, can't be Microsoft. But yeah, actually my personal brand on LinkedIn, and I guess curating my profile and spending a lot of time, making sure my LinkedIn reflect my career and who I was as a person, I think really unlocked the opportunity at Microsoft.
Okay. So
So
what
that's
were you
how I.
doing back then? Sorry to cut you off, but what were you doing back then on LinkedIn that grasped the attention of Microsoft recruiters? Were you posting certain types of content, setting up your profile in a certain way?
I think LinkedIn's really evolved over the last few years, hasn't it? So this was back in 2017, so quite a few years ago now. So I don't think content and engagement was as high as it is today. But I think just having a profile that really reflected who I was, what I was trying to achieve, like ensuring at the time that it was fully updated with, my skills, the projects that I was working on, kind of, and then also posting just everyday kind of thoughts around technology, evangelism, because my first role at Microsoft was actually a partner technology strategist role. So it was a broad technical role that covered the entire Microsoft stack. And it was around enabling and inspiring their kind of partner ecosystem to help them build practices. So I think because I was sharing my thoughts on technology, what people should be doing, the latest topics, that it kind of resonated with that specific role that they reached out for.
Amazing. So, was there anything that stood out to you working for Microsoft and Google, whether differences in the culture, the way they do sprints, things that you took with you, for the rest of your career? I do have some experience with Google myself, but more not from the inside, but more of the fun side. So
Yeah.
I'm a Google partner. So when you are a YouTube creator, you become a partner as part of the YouTube program. And back then, I don't know if they still have it. They used to have a YouTube space in King's Cross, if I remember correctly, that's where the head office, I believe, is at King's Cross. I'm certain it was at King's Cross.
Yeah.
So we get into the buildings and talk to the account managers and stuff. They have the most impressive place for lunch and food, and then you have like the Chinese corner and the Italian food corner. It's nothing like I've seen in a company, to be honest.
Oh, it's incredible. Like they do say if you live in London, you typically end up putting on so much weight just from eating all of the Google food, because they have the micro kitchens where you can pick up snacks all day. And then they kind of provide breakfast, lunch and dinner for their employees as well. So the perks at Google, are definitely something to shout home about. They actually have like on-site gyms, and you even get massage points. So for every year that you work there, you get, I think it's 60 massage points, and they have a on-site masseuse that you can go and visit. So it does feel very much like that American campus feel, I guess, of wanting to keep everyone in the office all day, every day. But I absolutely loved working for both companies. I do think you're surrounded by some of the brightest minds in the country. And I love how kind of diverse and inclusive both of their cultures were. I think as well, you're surrounded by a lot of kind of like academics at Google specifically, but people are still so incredibly helpful. So it is really that kind of, like, I do truly believe that both of their cultures are incredibly smart people who are kind of right on the cutting edge, but at the same time are just generally really helpful and lovely colleagues. I think one of the main things I took away from Microsoft is Satya Nadella brought this kind of growth mindset. And that's a huge part of Microsoft's culture, and that ability to kind of try things. There's a lot of what they call stretch projects and V teams at Microsoft, where you can get involved in things that are slightly outside of your kind of day job to help solve, wider problems, maybe in that industry or within the partner ecosystem or whatever it may be. But that kind of growth mindset is really ingrained, I think, in their culture, and just being able to try things, fail fast, learn, iterate. And I think it's just a great personality trait to be able to take forward into life, right? In terms of trying new opportunities in your career, or, trying new hobbies and skills in your personal life. So I think for me, that was one of the biggest takeaways from working at Microsoft. And then similarly, Google, they have this whole culture of being googly, and googliness is a value that they have and they look for when they're interviewing. So, being googly is about caring for other people and caring for your teammates. but it's also about dealing with things like ambiguity. And Google have quite a fast-paced working environment. I would say they feel more technical and more engineering led. So I think that sometimes can come with some chaos. So I think that skill set of feeling comfortable being uncomfortable is definitely something that I developed more when I was at Google. And I think it's, especially when moving into a smaller organization like Transparity, I think that has kind of helped me to be successful here as well, right? In terms of lots of spinning plates, lots of different priorities, and just trying to cut through and get things done.
Did you just say feeling comfortable, not being comfortable? Is that how
Yeah.
you put it?
Feeling comfortable being uncomfortable.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So basically you deal with any situation that comes in, no stress, take it on and find solutions.
That would be lovely, no stress. But I think
that's the plan. Yes, that's the plan.
Yeah. But I think it's, being a graduate and then working in a really kind of, Microsoft's quite a process-driven organization. I think like they've been around for a long time, right? They built a successful modern work practice business with Microsoft 365. And so when they've gone into cloud, they've kind of taken all of those learnings and processes into cloud. So there's a lot of processes, whereas at Google, it felt like it's more of that startup culture. So whereas at Microsoft, I felt prepared for most meetings and I could go in feeling comfortable. I think Google taught me that you can't be prepared for everything and you've got to kind of figure things out on the fly.
You mentioned you started with the partner side of things, helping them developing their practice and offerings, working with Microsoft. At what stage AI intrigued you and you thought, hold on a minute, this sounds interesting. This is maybe where you saw the future is. What did you like about being in AI, and at what point you made that switch to focus and specialize and become where you are today, a chief AI officer?
Yeah, great question. I think it was at a time when Microsoft were actually trying to work more with digital agencies. So they found that digital agency type partners were more at the kind of cutting edge of innovative technology, and that they were working with a lot of our customers at Microsoft in terms of different stakeholders to the traditional Microsoft kind of relationship. So more in marketing, more in different line of businesses, kind of more creativity projects that had separate budgets specifically for innovation. So I actually worked on that V team at Microsoft trying to recruit more digital agency partners. And through doing that, it really kind of increased my network. And I think that's one of the great things that I got from both Microsoft and Google is you build a network of people who are in all sorts of roles because you're working in cross-functional V teams a lot of the time. So there was actually a cloud solution architect at Microsoft called Philip Harvey. And he was the first person I'd ever met actually who told stories through data and AI. So he brought it to life telling stories. And he made it really tangible. So it wasn't just, here's a ton of data. But it was like, these are the insights. And then this is how you can actually create actions, right? And make things happen, leveraging the data. But he told it in terms of he would talk to it and like it would be a catalogue of Shakespeare plays, right? And he would bring the story to life talking about Shakespeare. So it really just, I guess, captured my interest. And he was a great mentor for teaching kind of that storytelling methodology and just, being that person to help me develop my presenting skills and storytelling skills. So that's how I actually first got into it more was taking an opportunity to work on a stretch project that was outside of my day-to-day job. And then it ended up becoming my day-to-day job.
It's amazing that how much of an impact good colleagues around you can impact you, whether on your life. So many years back, I had a colleague who got me on a gym journey. It's not even at work. It's just that energy is infectious, and you could change your whole life trajectory because you're working with people who have, that passion and the opacity. It's amazing.
And I think also a lot of the time, people are so willing to help, right? You know, I just said to Phil, I loved what you've done there. Like, that really inspired me. Like, would you mind spending some time with me if I craft my own presentation? So it's my own way of telling the story. But, you know, can you give me feedback? Can I practice presenting to you? And he gave up a lot of his time to do that. And I think that's probably one of my top tips for even getting into organizations like Microsoft and Google is your network. Because I think, you know, so many people, thousands of people apply for every job that's listed at Google. And it's like, what's going to set you apart? And I think your network and having referrals into those companies really help. So, you know, did someone go to your university that's now working at the company that you want to work for? Can you send them a really personalized message just explaining the journey that you're going on and kind of asking for support? Because I think at one point in time, we've all needed support from someone, and hopefully, you know, you've received that support and then you want to play it forward yourself. And I always really try and answer questions when people message me on LinkedIn or help out with, you know, things that people are trying to do in their spare time to build their personal brand, because I think you never know when you're going to need that back yourself, right? And it's important to help others.
No, absolutely. It's like good karma, isn't it? You do
Yeah.
good, be a good human being, really, and
Yeah.
it pays back. To me, that's how I like to live life. Treat people well, help them where I can, smile, be positive as much as you could, and it pays back. I think life is much better that way, and hopefully, you know, these are the kind of people we run into, and I think we should give Phil a shout out.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love that.
This impact, and maybe the podcast gets his way and makes him smile. The positive light you put on Phil. So we talked about networking and the community, Microsoft, and how everyone is excited about stuff. You had your first Ignite visit this last December. It was huge in terms of announcements and Copilot, AI, all that stuff, which we will dig into. But how was your experience like going to Ignite for the first time? I don't know if you've been to Chicago before. How was it like?
Yeah, I've never been to Chicago. I've been to Seattle quite a few times, and Vegas, but for Microsoft events, but never Chicago. And it was amazing actually, because I prepared for it to be absolutely freezing and packed, you know, gloves, hat, scarf, the lot. And it was really warm when we got there. It was warmer than back home. But then by the end of the week, there were like 2 feet of snow. Like the weather changed so quickly. So yeah, it was really cold, but they were very well set up for out there. Whereas if that was a conference here, it would have all stopped, right? No one would have been able to get there and it would have all fallen apart. But Chicago was really cool. It was great to be back in person at an event that size. I don't think virtually you get the same feeling, right? In terms of seeing Satya Nadella present in person. I think he's got such a cool aura, and I just love the way he presents, and it just is so like authentic. And then also I think just being in person, kind of taking in all of the energy, the atmosphere, people running around like headless chickens, collecting their badges and trying to go from one session to another in a 5-minute gap. And then just the size, the scale of the exhibition hall, the amount of stands, cool swag. I got lots of stickers. It was a really nice feeling to be back in person, definitely.
Do you have any tips for people going Ignite for the first time? Things that you learned, next time that will save me time. Let me register at this day so I could make it to that session.
Yeah, I actually did the technical pre-day, so I could register early, so I could pick up my badge early to avoid the crazy queues. The technical pre-day was really good actually as well, because it was hands-on workshops. So I did like a full day lab. So then it meant that I didn't need to do the labs that were available in the other days. I could just concentrate on the sessions. And then I tried to be really organized with my schedule, and in advance I mapped out all my sessions, and I didn't realize that they changed the rooms. So I was sat in one room waiting for a session to come up, and it was a different session. So top tip would be to check the schedule changes and the room changes, definitely.
That's a top tip there for sure. Were there any of the announcements and or sessions that you've attended that were like a highlight for you, which you are incorporating into your 2025 planning and where things are heading?
Well, I mean, I was shocked at the amount of announcements. I think it was quite hard to even keep up with. And so I just mostly focused on attending the AI sessions because I'm quite biased. I think Azure AI Foundry was the release of that was incredible. And I know it's kind of really just an iteration of what was kind of there with Azure AI Studio. But just seeing the fact that there's going to be this unified kind of platform for AI application development, and then also the cool stuff that they made available within that. So for me, the Azure AI agent service, content understanding, I think that multimodal kind of app dev capability is going to be, I think we're going to really see that take off over the next year or so. And again, like just that ability to move from the data into insights so quickly. Yeah. Some of the softer stuff that I loved was the announcements of the AI adoption framework and the AI well architected framework. I literally have that tab open every day. The AI adoption framework, I think, is one of my favorite resources that Microsoft have ever released. Okay. I just love that they break AI down into, what is your AI strategy? Kind of what is your AI security plan? What's your governance plan? And I think it provides quite nice kind of prescriptive guidance for companies that are starting out on their journey because it's so overwhelming, right? And I think a lot of companies look for Microsoft to provide that prescriptive guidance. So it's really great to see them doing that. And then go ahead.
No, go ahead. Continue your thought.
No, I was just going to say Purview. I think Satya said that was going to be kind of the product of the conference. And I think it really was in terms of all of the releases around things like Compliance Manager. And I love the fact that they've now got kind of AI reports within there to help companies as they're tackling like regulation changes. And then I know a topic close to both of our hearts as well around Copilot. I loved not only all of the technical announcements, but also this shift into really focusing on kind of the adoption and the metric side of it. So the fact that Copilot Analytics is now available, the fact that Viva Insights is now part of that kind of license, I think it's going to be really helpful for organizations that want to track how are we actually doing with rolling out Copilot? Like, what's the impact to the organization? So I loved that it kind of not just focused on the technology, but also helped with, how do we adopt this? How do we check that this is doing the right thing for our organization?
Yeah, it almost felt like the age of agents as well, isn't it? So these specialized agents and having these bespoke assistants to help you. I don't know if you've been following the social media recently. Satya Nadella had an interview and he made a comment that generated a lot of discussion. He said agents will replace Saas in the future, and you have that debate now. Is this an exaggeration? Is it in the distant future? What are your thoughts about that from an agent experience versus the, should we say, legacy or maybe traditional SaaS approach to solutions?
I think it's quite a controversial statement because I do agree that I think agents are the way forward. But if we think about a lot of organizations' level of maturity, so many of them are still trying to figure out their data strategies, right? And actually even a commodity product like Copilot feels quite a big change and a different way of working. So I think the journey to agents really being kind of looking like the vision that Satya is setting out, I think we're years away from that personally. And a lot of the organizations that we speak with at Transparity, agents feel quite scary, right? Like in terms of what are the guardrails that they want to put around them. They don't just want their employees being able to spin up agents everywhere, and they don't want 10 agents that do the same thing. So as much as I think agents are definitely where AI is going in the future, and I can't wait to see how we're actually going to interact with agents, because I think Copilot is like the starting point with getting everyone comfortable with agents almost. And I can imagine one day in the distant future that we'll be having conversations with our own personal Copilot like we are right now when we're starting our day, right? Like that's how I foresee it eventually. But I do think we're a few years away from agents kind of replacing Saas, definitely. I think we're going to see a lot of organizations like Microsoft infusing AI into all aspects of their technology stack. And I think we already see it with a lot of the off-the-shelf solutions and other organizations like Salesforce, right? They're infusing AI into their offering and trying to evolve their offerings. But yeah, I don't personally think Saas is dead just yet.
You guys in Dev, you still have time.
Yeah.
Still do great things. Maybe do some awesome agents as well to be current with what's coming. So, Jodie, people listening to us who are interested in AI, I think AI is an interesting topic regardless of what you do. Yeah. Even if you're not in tech, people are interested about it because the experience with AI, maybe people had the first-hand experience using Midjourney or using Chat GPT, and they've used it in different capacities. But given what I do and the kind of viewership that we have people who are interested in maybe a career in tech and get into AI and see how to break it through and build a career for themselves. It may feel overwhelming for people because when you look at AI, it's not really a small field. No. It's an overarching world of concepts and different variables, from data, machine learning, coding, and to business analysis. So in your opinion, if you have people who are looking to get into AI, what are the different specialisms or areas they can focus on, or maybe like grow gradually into that expertise?
Yeah, great question. I think for me, that's probably one of my biggest bugbears is that the misconception that AI is one thing or that AI is new. And like we know that generative AI is obviously relatively new, but organizations and people have been, working in the field of machine learning and computer vision and natural language processing for years, if not like decades, right? So I think there's so many different options when it comes to AI, and it definitely can feel quite overwhelming. And I think that's why it is important to, I guess, have that learner kind of strength and want to kind of keep up to date with the technology as it evolves, because the pace of change is so rapid. And what I think is great at the moment is that there's so many free courses available. Like a lot of organizations are offering things like hackathons and like in-person workshops for free. So if you wanted to see if AI actually does kind of interest you, I think there's now so many meetup communities and, networking events and panels and roundtables, like the options are endless. So I think it's great to kind of network and attend those events to see what you're interested in. But also, like you say, like even just because you're working in AI, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be technical. I think you can lean into your strengths, and we obviously work with people who do marketing from an AI perspective. So, being an AI marketeer, product management, I've worked with a lot of people who are just technology evangelists and present and kind of tell the story to bring tech to life. Like my skill set is definitely more strategy and kind of go to market. So even though I work in AI, I'm not necessarily hands-on anymore like I used to be. I no longer write code as much as, I used to do that 8 hours a day, and it's no longer the case. But I also feel like there's so many important sectors around cybersecurity, around actually AI policy and regulation, even building our own AI policy internally. We worked with our law firm who specialized in that, in AI, like AI regulation. So I think you can have a career in AI without necessarily being technical, right? So I just think, lean into your strengths and kind of see what happens.
That's amazing. And I think, to be honest with you, I really love that you added that point about the legal. Probably in some industries, even health professionals, if they work with AI models to discover illnesses, diseases, or maybe with robotics, even that kind of healthcare knowledge would feed into that. It's an amazing and a new world. So, given that you work with the strategy and you help Microsoft partners and customers and practices to be aligned with the demand of the market and where things are heading, do you see that is there shortages of certain skills or expertise in AI that people can get involved in quickly for 2025?
I think with AI, I guess on the generative AI side specifically, there's a lot of jobs that exist now that perhaps didn't exist 2 years ago, right? So if we think about things like prompt engineers, people that are supporting on things like kind of fine tuning, I think there are new job roles, even like chief AI officers. I think that's a role that's really only come about within the last few years, right? We've had chief data officers and chief data and analytics officers for a while, but there weren't that many chief AI officers until more recently. So I think it's more on the kind of latest technical stuff around generative AI agents is where there's still probably a gap in the market. But also, when we're working with organizations, there feels like there's still a gap around AI policy as well. So as an organization, like, what are your values when it comes to AI? What do you want your employees doing versus what you don't want them doing? Like, how do you approve new AI use cases? Would you have an AI council? So there feels like there's kind of gaps around that policy perspective still in industry as well. And I also think that some industries are more mature than others. So, AI has existed in things like pharmaceuticals, healthcare, retail, for telco, for many, or banking, financial services for many years. I think there's probably some less mature industries, things like education, maybe some of the more kind of professional services type organizations where, again, there seems to be a shortage of kind of AI skills and capability.
Like he said, there's so many new job titles and it's happening by the day. In fact, you may need to create new jobs just to meet the things that are evolving. And from our perspective, because we are really immersed into this field and into that side of the world, we see the excitement and we see the passion, and we are looking whatever comes in, we take it on board, we drive it, and be that force for what we do in the UK market, for example. But we also think, and that's a conversation you and I had before, to address the concerns that people outside of what we do have with AI, whether ethical concerns and most commonly job security. And if you talk to, and I'm sure you have, talked to people who have jobs that are outside of tech, they do have these fears. They think, will AI take my job? Will I be jobless? Is AI a net positive? Is there like dangers that come with AI when it comes to career and other things? I think part of it may be not being educated on AI, because now everyone's talking about AI. People who have no actual tangible experience, they go on, they talk about AI, or AI is this, is doing that, and lump it all into one small conversation. But from your perspective, and with career security and the way AI is growing, what are your views? Are these concerns valid? Are they exaggerated?
Yeah, I think exaggerated, but I don't think it's baseless. So I think we spoke before around, I think it was Andrew Ng, who was the founder of Google Brain. He said quite famously now that AI won't replace people, but maybe people that use AI will replace people that don't. And I do think there's some, like, that's a valid statement. I think more and more organizations are starting to look at how they can leverage AI for efficiencies, how they can, run more lean. So that's why I don't think it's a baseless kind of thing to be concerned about. But I don't think that any industry is going to be replaced entirely by AI, right? I think there's going to be some roles. So for example, if you're doing content creation, but it's below the level that needs any human creativity, then that's something that might be cheaper to automate than to leverage a human, right? But I think where you need emotional intelligence and human creativity, AI is never going to be able to replace that. So where I do see AI being leveraged is to automate those kind of mundane, low value roles. But
repetitive stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But that enables us to focus on higher value tasks, right? So whilst I see that, there's some concerns, I think it's more about, focusing on higher value activities that actually require kind of creativity and human intellect, right?
Yes, no, absolutely. Me myself, outside of what I do, so if we talk from a content perspective, the things that AI is helping me with now, traditionally, I would have needed to have a copywriter.
Yeah.
And by no means, I don't want to upset copywriters. I'm not saying ChatGPT is better than you.
Yeah.
But for low investment need for copywriting, the fact that you can train it on your voice and your tone, it does a lot of things for you, like video production, generating clips, so things that only a couple of years back you needed to hire video editors to do that low level stuff. Do you follow the creative side of AI, like the Sora video, and is it like 18 months ago we had the writer strikes in Hollywood? They had that fear. Did you follow that side of AI at all?
Not as deeply, but I think what I believe though is that, like, AI gives you the starting point. So a little bit like you were saying, like, it helps to expedite certain processes. So when I do a lot of our creative writing, like for example, when I was out in Ignite, our marketing team asked me, can you create a blog when you get back of what you learned whilst you were there? And I found that Copilot is a great tool now that creates that first draft, at least even giving you the structure to get started, right? So even though it still needs my authenticity, like my point of view, I had that starting point. And I've got some friends who are also kind of interior designers, and they use tools like Midjourney to kind of help them when they're meeting clients to do that initial prototype, right? That like starting point, the first draft. But then they're always going to need their knowledge of, actually, I know that this chair should be facing the door, not behind the door. And, they still need their experience to bring that to life for clients. So as much as I see people are concerned about the changes it's going to bring, I do think that it will just create starting points and take away those kind of lower value tasks a lot of the time. But did you follow the creative side? What are your thoughts?
So I've been following the not to the detail, but some of the video prompts. So the Sora models and a few other stuff, and the level that it's reaching now, it's that pro level, which is amazing. I'm conflicted about this. So on one side, I'll talk about the positive and then the negative. On one side, imagine if I'm a creative person, I'm a storyteller, and I would like to enter the market and compete. AI now would make that possible for me with the low-cost entry, because I have the creative idea, but I'm not an animator, I'm not a sketcher, I'm not all that. I could do that using AI and deliver my idea to the world, pitch it with low investment, monetary investment, while in the past, before these kind of technologies, it was almost exclusive to the big studios who can afford this, and they had monopoly on it. So I see it positively from that way.
Leveling the playing field.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I understand the concerns that video editors and the creators who work in the field have. There was, and I posted about this in LinkedIn, and one of our colleagues actually also felt strongly about it. There was, I'm not in the world of anime, so please, don't quote me. There was this famous anime artist who's made like these long feature anime that people love who are in that world. So someone with a startup, he said, okay, so I'll take all the best scenes from that anime and I'll use AI exclusively to produce these trailers in a production quality level. So he did this and he went viral all over Twitter, all over YouTube, and that made such a clash, and people weren't happy, basically, who follow that field, thinking, you need to follow the old school and the artists need to sketch on the paper. So I am a bit conflicted, but I do see the value.
Yeah, I think my conflicts with AI come more around the misuse of AI. So like misinformation, fake news, social disruption. Like sometimes it's so jarring to not know if something's real or not. Like I feel like we're not prepared for the massive number of like human-like agents that are going to be taking over X and Meta. And I think Meta were in the news this week around the fact that they've started releasing some AI profiles. And I think personally, the stage of AI adoption that we're in, I feel like it needs to be quite clear when something is an AI agent or when something is a human. Even when dealing with contact centers, I have got no issue at all dealing with AI agents if it's going to solve my problem quickly. But I do still quite like to know that I don't like to feel tricked, I guess. So I think the misuse of AI is hugely concerning still, but also the biases, I think, is still a reality. So I think as AI becomes more pervasive, I don't necessarily know that people in minorities are going to reap the same benefits as everyone else. And I also, as a woman in AI, the amount of women in AI concerns me in terms of that kind of gender gap.
Very narrow pool.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think Microsoft's CEO actually released a great LinkedIn post this week talking about women in technology. So actually there's only 29% of women in technology roles. One, that obviously decreases rapidly when women start trying for children and start families and try to return to work. But then when you look at women in AI, there's actually only 22% of the AI workforce globally is women. And then when you look at that representation at a senior level, it goes right down to 14%. So yeah, that's another thing for me, is how do we bring everyone on this AI journey?
So like having fair models, because if you don't have the diverse views involved, you will have skewed models and would provide skewed responses from one point of view rather than a wider pool of views, like the society is, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I think we're going to see the biases from the fact that the biases within the data, but then also just in the industry in general. If you've got less women in those roles, less women in leadership, less women in technology, you're not going to have that kind of the same fairness.
Absolutely. And hopefully, women and people watching today get inspired to get into this. Leaders like yourself, when people see you, maybe they never thought, oh, I could actually do that, but you can. And I've actually spoke about this topic before. I think one of the stigma around tech you think about tech as people sitting in the server room,
Yeah.
and it's that, IT office vibe, and there's nothing wrong with that. People enjoy and do what they do, but tech is much more creative, involved, and like you said earlier, Jodie, it's in everything now. It touches everything, and I hope that changes and we get more people and more women involved in AI and participate and drive that change, because otherwise it won't be as impactful.
Yeah, I think it goes right down to one, education, and getting more girls into STEM. But then I do think organizations can do a lot more to attract and retain talent, like women talent as well. There's a lady who, I'm not sure if she's still at Microsoft actually, but while she was at Microsoft, she started this community called Tech Her.
Okay.
And it's a great community of women in tech who kind of go along, present. There's obviously men that go along as allies as well.
Sure.
But there's just great topics, external speakers. And it just, I think, again, helps to just build that community and build that network so that women can take other women kind of on the journey as well.
Absolutely. And I really hope the social media gives these voices a fair share in the algorithm.
Yeah.
So people could hear them, at least, listen and see what's possible, because I feel the algorithm of social media on some platforms, it kind of shadows these positive messages and these life experiences, that could impact, people in a positive way in their life. But are you active in this, Jodie, yourself? Do you sound really passionate about it, which is great. Do you write about it? Do you post or get involved?
It's one of my goals for this year, actually. I think to take a wider role. I used to do more. So I think when I was at Microsoft and Google, they obviously had these kind of community programs as part of being a bigger organization. So Microsoft have a fantastic program called DigiGirls, where they actually bring school children into Microsoft offices, and they kind of give them a tour, and they hear, lots of inspirational speakers, but they also get to play around with the tech and do kind of like little hacks, which was really cool. So I used to kind of make sure I supported those. And likewise, when I was at Google, there's similar community outreach programs. So maybe that's my aim for this year. I should document it so it's out there. That I'd really love to make sure like Transparity are doing their part, and kind of, I know Michelle, our people in culture lead's really passionate about women in technology, and there is a women in technology group at Transparity, but as always, I think there's more you can do, right? So I think I've done a few of the women in AI panels. Microsoft Reactor had one recently, and I was a panelist on there. But yeah, I think there's a lot more I should and could be doing.
Amazing. We all should, to be honest. We all should, and give back and inspire people. That takes me to the point of regulation, because what we just discussed about potential biases and unfairness, given how impactful AI is going to be. And when I say regulation, not necessarily in terms of it being restrictive, but if you have anyone with funds going, I'm doing an AI startup, and they do a sensitive kind of service without doing their due diligence, policies, safety, and they roll out their models without proper testing to the public and to the consumer, they could, do really serious damage. Let's say someone ask it about a health thing, and then it gives them, and there've been some few examples of the earlier models. There was a model that was popular for Reddit users, and what it did, and I won't go into the details because it's a bit sad, but it's an AI system that people chat with, and it kind of becomes their friend. And so people on Reddit, they write to it their problems, etc., and then it took them in a bad direction. So in terms of regulation, what are your thoughts on that? What can be done to ensure these biases and lack of preparation doesn't take place in the market?
Yeah, it's not a topic that I'm a deep specialist in, to be completely honest. So I think I do think that the social media giants should have more accountability when it comes to AI being used on their sites. And I don't think we have seen them being held to account for a lot of the behaviors that we've seen on social media. But I do also agree with you, because I think if used in the right way, AI could be great to help with loneliness, right? And battling loneliness and helping to keep, whether it's the elderly or whoever it may be, company. But these things have to be done in the right way and treated with sensitivity. I know the UK obviously released a white paper last year, and obviously the EU AI Act came into place last year, but it seems like different. So, the US is taking a very different stance to the EU. And then, I think that's one thing with technology regulation. It always seems to be lagging behind the technology. And I think you do need guardrails in place. You do need to, we don't want AI that creates harm, that creates biases. And it's amazing that also we know that companies like Microsoft and Google are working with the government to shape our AI strategy for the country. But I think, at Google, they have internal reviews for any AI project that they're delivering with customers. They have reviews in place to make sure that it doesn't go against any of their values. The same as Microsoft with their responsible AI principles, right? There's this sanity check put in place that this project isn't going to create harm, right? It's not biased. And I feel like there's so many of these best practice learnings already in these organizations that why we can't create a country-wide policy. There's a ton more that we should be doing, right? Even in terms of, I think, our educational system and how we, the curriculum that we're teaching and how we're teaching. Like, it feels like AI is quite far behind in public sector and education compared to more commercial industries. So I feel like just as a society, there's a lot more that we can be doing, one, to regulate AI, but also to take advantage of AI in a positive way that's going to have, a meaningful impact on society.
You put it perfectly there, with the fact that regulation doesn't catch up as quickly with tech. It's so true. Even when it comes to blockchain, for example, this has been going on for 10 plus years, and people behind the policies don't even understand the technology. It amazes me, but yet doesn't.
Yeah, I think it's the same with GDPR as well, right? I think there's so many examples of where, and that's why I've been to a lot of conferences where they talk about AI policy and AI regulations, and people who, actually are from that discipline and know it inside out, they can't even agree on when it's going to happen. Like, I went to a conference in London last year, and they had a few different organizationals, kind of regulatory legal leads on stage, and they were saying, like, place your bets, kind of when's the US one going to be finalized, when's the UK, and there was just no agreement. Some people were saying 2028, some people were saying 2030, and it just feels crazy that what's going to happen in between now and then. Who knows?
So they're waiting for the singularity, Jodie, to reach that point, and then let's do the regulations.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something that you're passionate about. I think you are. You've been definitely driving the strategy for that. You mentioned Copilot a few times throughout the podcast, and we may have people listening. So that Copilot thing sounds interesting. What is Copilot? So if you could, for the newbies, what is Copilot? What value does it bring? How people can use it?
Yeah, I think I love Microsoft's explanation now. I guess their branding is that Copilot is the UI for AI, like the user interface. And I love that kind of, I think that helps to bring it to life. But And then you also hear people saying it's kind of like the reimagined version of Clippy almost, right?
We all miss Clippy. We all miss Clippy.
Yeah. But really, Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, it's a personal AI assistant for work, right? So it's grounded in your Microsoft 365 data, but it also leverages Microsoft's graph so that it allows you to basically have this, smart assistant that helps you to do your day job. So examples of that are things like, I've been on holiday for 2 weeks, or we've just had the Christmas break. I love that at Christmas we don't come back to too many emails typically. But what Copilot allows you to do is help me prioritize my inbox. Based on knowing me and seeing how I've worked, you've learned what's a priority, who are my important contacts. So it's able to do things like prioritize your inbox, but also you can quickly search for information. You can brainstorm project ideas with your colleagues. And I love that it's kind of basically simplifying our day-to-day tasks, right? I think my favorite thing is just the new capability within Teams, the transcription, right? The fact that I no longer have to write summaries for my meetings, the fact that it knows who takes what action. And for executives, I think one of the best things as well is sometimes my diary is triple booked, or for example, next week I'm in Dublin at a Microsoft Tech Summit. And there's going to be meetings taking place that I really want to catch up on, but I'm not going to be able, I don't want to sit and listen to all of these, hours. So just being able to see the summarization of that meeting, checking, was I mentioned in that meeting? Did I pick up any actions because I was away? I just think Copilot being that kind of smart assistant at work is just making our day-to-day lives easier, right?
Absolutely. I love that follow feature, especially, when you get double booked.
Love it.
Did anyone mention my name? No, good.
Yeah.
If it is, you will see what are the. I really love it. So I'll talk about it as a user myself.
Yeah.
And really, I can't see myself working without it now. And I can't say that about any other technology I used in the past 5 years.
Yeah, if you took it away, you would really notice the pain, right? I think it did feel like when I first got Copilot, it didn't feel like it naturally clicked straight away. Like I didn't think it was naturally ingrained in my day-to-day life. I think there wasn't a compelling event to make me use it to begin with. Because, when we all started kind of using Teams, I think the compelling event really was we went into lockdown and we had no other choice. But with Copilot, to begin with, it did feel like I was forcing myself, like every day, like, how can I use this? Oh, I should make sure I use this. Still, sometimes I'm terrible for forgetting to turn transcription on my meeting, and I need to set the regular ones to automatically transcribe. But it did feel like there was a little bit of a learning curve for me. And I do think depending on your digital literacy, there may be a bit more of a learning curve. And that's why the adoption and change management side of Copilot is so important, right? Taking people on that journey, making them feel comfortable with it, making sure they understand how they can leverage it. But I think as soon as that penny drops, now, if you took it away from me, I would be lost without it. But it did feel like it was a little bit of a learning curve.
Absolutely. It's like with anything new, isn't it? You just make your way around. It's like getting a new car. You see like a new dashboard, the new buttons. What do they do? And the moment, it becomes muscle memory at that stage. So you mentioned the adoption with Copilot. How do you find the adoption in the UK, for example, for Copilot or Microsoft AI in general? Have you come across some cases with Copilot making big difference in everyday life for organizations?
Yeah, I think we're really privileged at Transparity that we work with a lot of non-profit organizations. And I think we've seen the benefits of Copilot for accessibility, Copilot for well-being as well. There's a few people that work in our organization that are going through the menopause and they're struggling with their memory, and actually being able to have Copilot there to kind of aid them, to make sure they're not forgetting anything, to keep them up to date has been really revolutionary, I think, in terms of just employee well-being. So I think we've seen quite a few instances of where it's not just necessarily the productivity gains, which I think when Copilot first came out, that's what everyone was looking for. But actually now I think there's a lot more to it, and it's really removing some of that everyday stress and just making life a little bit easier, so people's general well-being seems higher as well. And I think, we rolled out Copilot, gosh, how many months ago now? Maybe about 8 months ago, I think, as an organization. And I think it did take some time, and we chose to do it in tranches. And I love that kind of persona-based approach to rolling out Copilot, so that you're not only enabling people on the more general capabilities, but actually how can this help you in your job? I think that's when we're going to see more of this evolvement into the agents piece, right? The extensibility of Copilot. And I think that feels like the natural journey that we're all going on, like getting used to Copilot, and then actually, wow, this is impressive. What else can it do for me? I trust it now, so I'm more open to let's see what else it can do for me.
Yeah, Microsoft are also pushing it for the public in terms of the personal Copilot as well, and like doing it with things, Paint and recalls and all, especially with the modern AI built-in hardware from Microsoft. I don't know if you've seen the new Captain America from Marvel, where they actually use Copilot in the movie. It's so amazing. It's like,
no.
I get what we do actually now is with the Marvel superheroes. So there is the new Captain America having a fight with the baddies and all that, and he's got the assistant sitting, where the central room for the superheroes.
Yeah.
He opened the Copilot Plus laptop and fired Paint, powered by Copilot, and started designing a new superhero, suit for Captain America. Oh, how did you like it green? And then started prompting. It was so amazing. Well, I think it's also going like for, regular everyday use outside of work as well. Yeah,
that's impressive. That's good marketing from Microsoft to get that into a Marvel film. Definitely good brand placement.
Lots of fun. It's getting more and more fun, for sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned just a couple of minutes ago about the education and the fact that some areas were lacking in, and there has been that conversation going on the news and online with some classrooms saying, if people use AI, that's cheating. But then you have modern approach to education where it says, actually, you should teach students how to utilize AI to learn faster. Yeah. And get more information and get more out of the classroom. You see, actually thinking about it, Jodie, if we look at the classrooms now, they look pretty much similar to the classrooms of 40, 50 years ago. Yeah. In most cases, same seating plan, there's a whiteboard and there's a teacher pointing. Surely there are more effective ways of teaching and learning. So my question to you, in terms of education, how do you see AI impacting that, whether in a good way or a positive way? And what other sectors you see AI impacting in a big way over the next 5 years, whether the way we get health treatments, service? Yeah,
I think not just the classrooms have stayed the same, but the curriculum feels like it's stayed the same as well, right? So I think there's so much to be done, and it feels like it should be done at a country level. I feel like it's almost going to be done from some schools are going to be more proactive than others. But I think not only does AI basically potentially provide different ways of learning, so you're helping to kind of level the playing field again for students, but also, like you say, we need to set them up for success when they go into the workplace, right? And if their employers are expecting them to be able to leverage tools like Copilot, to be able, not to do these mundane tasks, to be able to summarize accordingly, yet they're still kind of writing essays as part of their schoolwork, it doesn't feel like the two things match. But I think not just on the student side, but for me, I think it's a huge opportunity to basically take away a lot of that admin burden from teachers, right? A lot of the teachers that I ever speak to spend so much time having to do things like lesson planning, marking, not actually spending the time with children, inspiring them and helping set them up for the future. So I think AI could basically not only reduce staff workloads by taking away a lot of that mundane, repetitive stuff and helping to plan lessons, right? But also it could then improve a lot of like the learning outcomes as well. But I think the one thing about AI in public sector, and we see this, I think, in local, regional, like councils, like local authorities, I think in healthcare, in social care, is there's still such a long way to go on data strategy and being able to bring all of those data sources together to really be able to make the most out of AI. I think we see edge cases where they can do some cool stuff for specific use cases, but really being able to see that stuff that's going to have a genuine like impact. I think there's still a lot of work to be done on data strategy first, personally.
So we need to be walking before we can start sprinting. And I think this is the biggest challenge really with organizations who are looking to bring that change. Oh, we like this, let's do it.
Yeah.
But they don't consider the starting point that they need to nail really to get the most value out of AI.
And I think also a lot of organizations have technical debt. Like they've made technical decisions before that might not be then the most modern approach to, to how to do things to be able to leverage AI now. So I think we're going to see a lot of challenges, I think. And we have over the years anyway, right? Like we've seen blockbusters becoming Netflix and, estate agents, and then you've got purple bricks. Like I think we're going to see more industry challenges that don't have the technical debt. They're starting from greenfield and they can basically be true digital first with AI infused at the core. And I think we'll see this in insurance, providing a much more personalized approach. I think we're going to see this in a lot of the professional services industries. So accountancy, legal firms. And there's already some great examples. I think like Microsoft have great AI customer references for some of these organizations, and they've stood up on stage at Microsoft's AI tour recently. So like Clifford Chance, for example. But I do think, these companies that can kind of start new, and these, even if you've got these innovation arms within more traditional organizations, I think they're going to be basically challenging what the new status quo is and what we as consumers will come to expect when we're working with organizations. Like, a lot of the life moments that we go through. So like when we buy our first home or when we move home, things that should be so exciting, a lot of the times that's so stressful because of the like admin involved and how they're not in the 21st century in terms of why am I still writing things on paper and scanning it back to you? So I think there's so much opportunity for automation, intelligence, analytics, personalized customer experience, the whole shebang.
So from what you tell me, really leaders need to take the tech innovation seriously, because they could be out of business if they don't, onboard and be on par with their competitors.
Yeah, I think even in like things like retail, we've seen such disruption, right, by organizations that know their consumer. They are able to offer recommendations if things are out of stock. They're able to say these things are frequently bought together. They're able to kind of create all of their customer data through having things like loyalty programs. I think like having that data strategy to then be able to infuse AI, people are going to obviously be more successful if they can get a hold of that.
Absolutely. How do you stay up to date with AI yourself, given that you are on the very forefront of the AI world and strategy? Do you have like sources, things that you make sure to follow so you're up to date?
I think quite similar to you, really. I think I love LinkedIn. I follow a lot of people on LinkedIn where I just like their content. They provide good summaries. They share good content. I follow a lot of the product group leaders at Microsoft, for example. So when they announce new tech updates, it just comes onto my LinkedIn feed. But also things like the blogs the Microsoft blogs. Like I bookmark a lot of things that I can just refresh once a day, once a week to see what's going on. For me, that's probably my main things. Another goal of mine this year is to try and listen to more podcasts and things whilst I'm traveling in the car or traveling on the train, to make the most use out of my time, because I think that's the hardest thing, is making time for the learning, right? And I also try and attend Microsoft events as much as I can.
So everyone listening, Jodie's LinkedIn profile also will be at the description, because you post insightful and useful content as well.
Thanks.
I'm sure people will find that useful and helpful. It's a traditional question that I have here. What I'm trying to do is to share, the thought process, or how people get more information and do reading.
Yeah.
If you do, to make book recommendations for people to have on their list. And what I'm trying to do is to pick at least a book from each guest that comes on the podcast to read in 2025. I think that's a very ambitious goal, but I'll try.
Nice.
Do you have a reading list that you can recommend to people, whether, in your field, fiction?
Yeah. Reading is like one of my favorite hobbies. So for me, outside of work, in the evenings, when I go on holiday, like to take myself away from work into an alternative like reality, that is reading for me. I'm quite a speed reader, so I can typically read a book a day on holiday and things like that. My Kindle Unlimited is the best thing I've ever purchased. But I like to read more crime to like just have a break from work. It just takes me away. But in terms of more career development and like work-based books, I'm going to go with a non-AI book, actually. I don't know if you've ever heard of a book called The Squiggly Career. It's by two women, Helen Tupper and Sarah Ellis.
I haven't read it though, but I know of the name.
I love it because I think we all have these kind of, our careers are really long, right? And they're not going to stay the same, I don't think, especially in technology. I think things evolve quite quickly. And one of the things I love about their book is that it talks about the concept of ditching the ladder. So, not every career step needs to go upwards. And it talks about the fact that actually you can have these stepping stones, right? And you can kind of go from left to right. And I guess the main things that for anyone listening that you'd get out of the book is that it talks about playing to your strengths, and like identifying what are your values and what are your strengths. And I think that has always helped me to decide on what roles I want to take, where my gaps are. Like in my career, I've actually gone from one discipline to another. So Microsoft's and Google are great companies that kind of allow you to go from a tech role into a marketing role into a sales role. And this book was really great for me to kind of determine when it was the right time for me to take those moves. And it also talks about overcoming your confidence gremlins, which I think there's been times in my career where I've definitely felt that imposter syndrome. And it talks about things like building better support networks. And again, I think that's always really helped me in my career. When I moved to Google, that was purely because somebody that I'd built a really close relationship with at Microsoft had gone to Google and they asked if I would go and join their team. So again, that kind of networking piece has played a big part in my career as well. So yeah, I really, really recommend the book. I think it's great for anyone who's figuring out what to do next.
You've given us a lot of golden nuggets throughout the podcast that I'm sure people will find really useful, because the struggle they have, and I've interviewed, had a guest, Jack, who's a recruiter in the space, and he's now covering the US cloud Microsoft market. And one of the challenges that people have, they go and send, CVs to every opening that matches what they do, and they feel so disheartened because they don't hear back. They feel rejected.
Yeah.
But the advice you've given them, building that, brand image, connection with people, they will, I think they'll excel much more effectively in their career.
And I think it's so important to not take that personally. And I know it's easier said than done, but I think we're in such a competitive technology market. So many big organizations have made huge layoffs, right? Thousands of people. So all of these people are fighting for the same small job pool. And I think it truly doesn't say anything about you or your capabilities if you don't hear back from these organizations. I think all of us have applied for jobs and never heard back, right? And it just means that they weren't the right fit and that wasn't the right opportunity. I truly believe fate, everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely.
I think my advice, if going for organizations like a Microsoft and a Google, is the referrals are key. If you can try and get a referral, a lot of the time it helps you to jump through that initial step, and a lot of the time it kind of guarantees you that interview because someone at that organization is basically saying, yeah, I know them and I vouch for them. And so again, that's why I think that personal brand that helps you to build your network is key, because it typically will unlock those kind of opportunities for you in the future.
Amazing. So what are you up to in 2025? Any exciting projects, plans, things you're looking to do this year?
Personally, I've actually booked my wedding. So I'm getting married in July.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So thank you. Finally getting there.
Amazing.
We've been engaged for a few years now. So there's been a lot of pressure to get a wedding booked. You get engaged and the next question is, when are you getting married?
Yes.
So
yes.
On a personal level, getting married, hopefully moving home, and eventually hopefully starting a family, which is why that kind of maternity topic and the return to work and stuff feels really important to me personally at the moment. It does feel like it's a scary industry to navigate those changes in. But I guess from a professional perspective, I think we're just getting started on our AI journey really at Transparity. I think last year we laid a lot of like the foundations in terms of what we, building the teams and starting to think about what our go-to-market strategy is. And obviously that evolves really quickly at the moment with the pace of change in technology. But I think we launched some solution accelerators last year. I'm really excited to see those evolve. We're actually going to be releasing one that's specific to bid management soon, which I think is one of the most popular use cases we're kind of seeing at the moment. And then I think the Copilot shift to agents is going to be a really big topic of this year. And I think I definitely need to spend more time understanding, I guess, Microsoft's decision tree of, when do you leverage Copilot Studio? When do you leverage Azure AI Foundry? And just, I think there's still a lot of learning for me to do around that kind of agentic world, definitely.
Amazing. You know what? I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Like I said earlier, lots of golden nuggets, lots of information there. And this is really, thank you for being here. The guests that I invite, I know them and I know the quality and the value they bring to the world. And I think people can, learn from that and develop their career, their professional path by learning from real people and real experts. Is there any topic or anything you would like to add that we haven't covered during the podcast?
Not that I can think about. I think it's been a great conversation, and I think it's so lovely to have the conversation outside of work, right? I think what you're doing with your podcast is going to help so many people who are trying to navigate this industry, right? From things like recruitment and how to make your profile pop through to, what are some of the concerns in the industry. So I think, I just thank you so much for having me, and kudos to you for doing such a awesome job of kind of bringing this podcast to the masses as well.
Pleasure. Thank you very much. And hopefully we can do that again and discuss the upcoming updates that will come in this field. Again, thank you, Jodie. And thank you all for listening. See you next time.
Bye.